Coming up on the program, we're going to plant some peppers in the ground in our front yard garden, and we'll show you how to do it for best success. And now it's time to get our yacons in the ground. All that and more coming up today on the Wisconsin Vegetable Garden. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener is sponsored in part by, for all your non-GMO, heirloom, organic, vegetable, flowers, and herb seeds, visit dollarseed.com. Sioux Growing Supply, located in Wausau, Wisconsin, focusing on certified leaf compost, an excellent amendment for poor soil. With their new garden blend, improving soil structure in clay and sandy soil, great for creating new garden beds. Also available from Sioux's, pre-filled trays and pots with professional potting soil mix or organic rice hull-based potting soil mix. Bag and bulk of certified leaf compost also available. Visit SiouxGrowingSupply.com. Don't poison your soil with municipal water. Attach a body, mind, and soil hose and filter. Free shipping exclusively through the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. Just click on the body, mind, and soil icon. Authentic Haven brand soil conditioner for the home gardener. Easy to brew, 100% organic. Visit Minerty.com. Rain Reserve. Reserving your rain, preserving our future. Rain Reserve, manufacturing of rainwater capturing capabilities. Visit rainreserve.com and use coupon code RAIN2016 to save 10% on your total purchase. Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. I'm Joy Baird. We are in our front yard garden where we're going to plant some peppers, and we've got the garden full except for the peppers. Now, we've got 200 square feet of growing space in the front yard here. And if you look at the fence, we got an additional 160 square feet of vertical space that we're going to utilize, and we have in the past too. We got our tomatoes up on this end. Now, with any given garden, based on the size, crop rotation is important. But with the size of this size or smaller, crop rotation can be difficult. So we maneuver the crops as we can, because we can't really put the tomatoes at the far end because it gets shaded for most of the afternoon with the pine tree. So we want to keep that in mind as well. We've got 10 tomato plants here. Now this will, these tomatoes and the tomatoes at the large garden, that will give us 65 tomatoes that we have put in the ground and in containers. We have started all of them from seed except for 2 of them here, which we purchased when we spoke at a local garden center. They had a whole bunch of heirlooms, and we couldn't resist the temptation to buy 2 heirlooms that we had never grown before. So we did buy 2, but we've got 65 tomatoes in the ground in 2 locations. Now, we do also have some volunteer things coming up in the front yard garden. We've got cilantro, we've got radishes from last year. Radishes are not going to really develop because they're too close to one another, so we're just going to let them grow. You could eat the greens. We also got some random potatoes coming up. We got our 2 yacons here in the ground. That's about all the space we have available in the front yard. Yacons is the root crop that comes from the South America and the Andes Mountains, and you can purchase these online. And we were able to save the rhizomes from 2 of them that we purchased, or we were given last year, and we have 24 now that we've planted in various locations. We've got 3 different hills of potatoes here. These 2 were planted at the same time about 3 weeks ago, and we just planted this hill here just recently, and this will give us a small amount of potatoes in the front yard. Now, like I talked about on this fence here, at the division here, we've got 5 sections. This section here, we've got pickling cucumbers, slicing cucumbers, and lemon cucumbers spaced underneath the fence, and they'll grow up and utilize the fence as a trellis. From this division on, we've got all pole beans, so we're utilizing the fence that way as well. Now, we don't have a neighbor, and this is just the front yard fence, so we can use the fence without any problems with any neighbors in that. We have some sweet corn here that we've just planted. Now that's going to be 25 years in a very small location. We've built the soil, added coffee grounds, added a good organic fertilizer. So that's the hopes that will happen, as well as we've got chives and shallots coming up. Ones that we planted, these were ones we planted last November, and we have potatoes that are volunteer potatoes that we'd missed from harvesting. Now we're to the to the planting of the peppers. We've got a spot for 4 peppers, and we're going to plant a cayenne pepper, not because we like eating cayenne peppers, but simply because we'll use it to dry out and either make chili powder with it and or make sprays that we can apply to our plants to prevent bugs and insects and varmints from eating on them in the years to come. So we got 4 here, so we're gonna plant the cayenne first here. All of these peppers were started from seed. Now I do have black beauty zucchini planted here, and we've got a number of brassicas, kale, cabbage, and some Brussels sprouts among this area. We do have some weeds and a whole lot of volunteer lettuce that has come up as well. So you've got a lot of stuff packed in a very small area, and it can be done. It's called intensive planting, or putting a lot of stuff in a small area, sometimes tighter than what the book recommends you to do that. But if you've got good fertile soil and a little experience, this will work very well for you. So we're going to plant the pepper here in the ground. Now peppers, unlike tomatoes, cannot be buried deep. Tomatoes, we plant them real deep, about 70% below soil level, to allow the hairs on the roots to create, the hairs on the stalk to create roots. Peppers, even though they're in the same family as tomatoes, they don't need that. Now you can plant them about 1 inch deeper. You will see on some peppers some bumps or nodules above soil level, and those are some potential roots. But about 1 inch deep than what's in the container is really the extent of the depth you need to plant peppers of any variety in the ground. So we're going to put a little extra help with the pepper. We're going to add some bone meal to the hole. First of all, we want to make sure we want to dig the hole out deep enough. Now this soil is very moist because we have a very thick layer of pine mulch, pine needles as a mulch on the garden. It's not going to make the soil acidic. By the time the pine needles will break down in their acidic state, they will become neutralized and they won't affect the soil's pH. On the tree, they're about a 3.5, but because of the longevity it takes for these to break down, they neutralize and they're good for the soil. They won't hurt anything. So we want to dig down deep enough here that we can get a good, that'll be fine. Now when removing any type of plant from a tray or a cup, we don't want to just yank it out, because it will and can snap the stem, disturb the roots to a point where it stresses the plant out excessively, and then all your work is gone for naught. And also, if you have any sprouts, any flowers, or any small peppers on your pepper plant, go ahead and remove them now, because they're going to stress the plant out. As it goes in a new home here, it's going to go under kind of a shock period, and you're really hurting the plant by leaving those flowers and buds on. By removing them, they're going to put more energy in the roots and then begin producing good fruit. So we want to tip it over, squeeze the container, and the roots are nice, white, nothing's root bound at all. Now before I put this in the ground, I'm going to add just a little bit of bone meal to it, just to stimulate root growth and accelerate and help flower development a little bit. Put a little soil on top of that so we're not in direct contact, and we'll set the pepper in there. Now, I put it in a very tight hole, but I will fertilize around the top here, and then I'll cover it up with some soil. We're just using a fertilizer here that we've created, just with some fertilizer we had laying around, some good organic fertilizer, and a little Epsom salt here in the mixture as well. We'll add some Epsom salt to the hole as well, and I'll explain the reasons why. Okay. So this is extremely wet soil. There's some clay consistency in here as well, but I'm going to work very gently around and break it up and put it on top of the fertilizer. And as that fertilizer and you water, it's going to water down and reach the roots, as well as the roots will grow into the bone meal that I placed at the bottom of the hole. And we'll add a little bit of Epsom salt, and this will just help to prevent some potential blossom rot that the pepper plant may occur, as well as help stabilize and bring make the plant healthier. The magnesium sulfate in the Epsom salt helps make the plant healthier and happier and greener in that aspect of it. So you can just leave the Epsom salt on top of the ground. and we'll just take some pine needles or whatever mulch you do have available, dry grass clippings, shredded leaves, straw. If you do choose to use dry grass clippings, make sure, one, they don't have a whole lot of seeds involved in them, in the clippings, because you're going to bring the seeds in the garden and you're going to have weeds. Secondly, make sure it's not been treated. If you're going to get neighbors' grass clippings or yours, make sure you didn't treat it with some kind of chemical, because you're going to bring that in, put it around your plants. As you water, that chemical is still in the greenery, and it will affect the plants and potentially kill it based on what toxicity the chemical was used, as well as you want them to be dry before you put them in, because that can create mold and introduce fungus and problems for your plant. You can dry them in the yard, on a walk path in the garden, on a driveway. Just make sure they're not sopping wet, because that's where problems will occur. So that's just one pepper. Now you can plant these peppers, and we're planting them about 10 inches apart. You can put them a little tighter, a little farther apart if you have a lot of space, but we're going to go about 10 inches apart, and that's how easy it is to plant a pepper in the ground, as well as having a lot of space or a little space. You can get a lot of peppers in a small area, no matter if they're hot or if they're mild. Now, you want to label your peppers when you plant them. If you have multiple varieties of peppers that have similar shapes and colors, such as the Hungarian sweet and hot, identical in shape, size, color, and texture until you bite into it. So keep that in mind if you have some that are very similar in shape and size, that you mark them so you don't expect it to be a mild pepper and you bite into it and it's a hot pepper. So that's how easy it is to plant peppers in your garden, and they require full sun if at all possible. So when it comes to growing a pepper in a container, you can have you don't need they're a heavy feeder, but you can have a moderately sized container, a 5-7 gallon grow bag. This is a high 3 from Root Maker, and all we're going to do is, it's filled with good certified leaf compost, and we're just going to make a hole here to plant the pepper in. Very wet, good compost. So before I put the pepper, I'm going to add some bone meal to the hole, just to help the roots stimulate better, as well as flower production. Now this is a California Wonder, removed out of its container. Some of the soil fell off perfectly fine. You do want to acclimate this, get it hardy to the outside, which we have done. I'm going to take some compost here, backfill over that bone meal just a little bit, and we can bury these things a little deeper. They'll put roots on just a little bit, not like a tomato where roots will potentially grow the whole stalk, but they will put a little roots on a little bit down the stalk there. So I'm going to backfill just a little bit, and then I'm going to add some fertilizer here. I'm going to add a balanced fertilizer that we made, as well as a little hit of Epsom salt just to help the plant. Now with a container plant of any sort, such as this pepper, you're going to feed it every month. And what it would recommend is take an all-purpose, organic, well-balanced fertilizer, and each month apply it on the top layer of the container, and then just work it in the top couple of inches of soil, and that way it can continually feed the pepper. Another thing we want to do is we want to mulch around this to hold the moisture in, and also keep some of the splash back of the soil from getting on the leaves and kind of potentially causing some issues there. Dry grass clippings, straw, shredded leaves, whatever you have that's an organic material. So growing a pepper, anything in a container, is pretty easy if you follow the necessary steps and keep the plant fed water as well as nutrients. So now it's time to plant our yacons. We're a little later, probably by about 3 weeks. You can plant these a little earlier in the season that we're doing, but we want to be safe and be sure we put them in the ground when everything's safe. They can't handle a little frost, but it's just better to wait on our end to do this. Now, we got the original 2 plants from Nichols Garden Nursery up in Oregon. At this time a year ago, we planted them in the bed over there, and they grew. We really didn't know a whole lot about the growing and understanding the plants. Now these, if you're not familiar with what a yacon is, they call it a sun plant or a sun root, and it comes from the Andes Mountains in South America. They grow 5-6 foot tall, put on roots that you harvest and that is edible, that has a resemblance of sweet potatoes. There's several different varieties available. You can start them from seed, or you can start them from rhizomes that all of these plants that we have planted and will plant will produce. We had a number of rhizomes. I think we had 11 or 12 rhizomes last year, and we started them very early this year, and we divided them probably much smaller than what we needed to or should, but they all produce very nice plants here. Now, once you get and purchase Yacons plants, you never have to buy them again. They are kind of like, if you save the rhizomes correctly, we'll have a link in the show notes below on the process that we went through the whole year of planting them, growing them, and saving the rhizomes, which we learned as we went, and we're sharing more information about these. Now, these will grow very well, and they have grown very well here in Zone 5A, 5B in southeast Wisconsin. You can probably get away with Zone 4 possibly, but they need about 200 and some odd days to grow to maturity, and that's from the time you plant the rhizome to the time you harvest it in late fall. Now, there's a couple of things if you really want to get into some unique plants, including the yacon. There's a great book that's available at cultivariable.com. It has a whole list of vegetables that I've never heard of, can't pronounce some of them. Yacons are one of them. Acas, which will be one plant that we'll be planting later on, is another one. Now, it has a whole section just on the yacon and the different varieties and how to grow it from seed, how to grow it from the rhizomes, and the soil requirements. Now, if your soil is rich in organic matter, you should do very, very well here and really don't need any additional fertilizer requirements. Our soil is not as up to the standards that we want it to be, but we are working on it. So it is a heavy user of potassium. So if the soil doesn't have it, you want to have a fertilizer that has that available. Potassium is that third number on the fertilizer bag, so a high number of that. Minimum nitrogen requirements. If you have too much nitrogen in the soil, the plant will do very well in top growth, but really hamper in root development. And phosphorus, soil again should, if your soil has enough phosphorus, you should be fine. We're going to add some phosphorus. Phosphorus helps develop roots and flower production, and this is a root crop, so we're going to add the recommended applicational rate for the fertilizer we have just to give it a helping hand in growing, and we'll add some fertilizer spikes, and we'll talk about that a little later. Now, these will grow up till fall and should produce a nice flower on them, kind of like the Jerusalem artichokes do, and they're really easy to plant here. Now, I've worked this bed very diligently, added compost to this bed, good certified leaf compost from Sue's, and some coffee grounds, which will have about a 2% nitrogen in that. And we want to space these 2 foot apart. Any tighter, they're going to hamper each other's growth. Now, this is going to put on a big canopy, should get about 5 to 6 foot tall. Beautiful plants we started from rhizome. Very pleased with the success that we've had. And I'm going to tip this out here. Not really root bound. Now, you wanted to start these 2 to 3 months before you was actually going to put them outside, and we started them 3 months just to make sure we had this plant size. You want to be able to make sure that they're no taller than 18 inches, because if they're taller than 18 inches, they can get very weak out here in the early stages of life. You do want to harden these off just like you would your tomatoes, your peppers, etc. Now, these were grown in plastic party cups simply because I didn't know how the roots were going to react if we put them in a root trainer or a root maker and try to get more roots on it. So it worked very well. Loose soil, very moist. We kept them moist. Only thing I'm going to do is tease the roots out. You can see they're somewhat wrapped. Now, each one of these roots has the potential to grow a root, and there are going to be rhizomes at the top here. So we just want to bury them. I've got them spaced here. You just want to bury them as deep as they were in the container. And I'm going to add, like I said, a little phosphorus, a little bone meal here, just to give it a little kick. At the bottom of the hole, I'm going to cover it up just a little bit so we don't have direct contact, but the roots can work its way into it. Very nice plant. I'm going to put it about ground level, maybe a 1/4 inch deeper, and just backfill with the compost and the soil that's here. And then we want to mulch it with something. Dry grass clippings, shredded leaves, shredded paper, an organic material. Really shy away from the synthetic stuff, or wood chips, because you're going to, wood chips take a long time to break down. If you do mix it in with the soil, it's going to rob the soil of nitrogen. You don't want that. So we just got dry grass clippings here. We'll mulch around, and then we'll water it in heavy just to make sure. Now, as you can see here, I've got a smaller row here that I've worked. That's just the width of our bed. Now, as these grow, we may need to bring some more compost in and put on top, because some of these roots, or the roots may penetrate out like a potato would, and you need to cover it up or heal it up a little bit. So that's something we might need to be very aware of. So, and I'm just going to water it in. Just give it a little water, even though it was moist, just to kind of help everything settle in. Also, they require a lot of potassium. I've got some fertilizer spikes here that are a 2, 3, 4. Got a 4, which is the final number, has good potassium. Now, potassium in your garden, if you apply a heavy potassium fertilizer, it can potentially and does make your harvest of the fruit or vegetables a little sweeter. So all I'm going to do is just take a spike and put beside each one of these plants, and that will dissolve over some time here. Not a requirement, but knowing what your soil needs will greatly help the success of whatever crop you're growing. So if you've never grown yacons before, maybe a little late now in the season to get them, but it's something to think about. It's a very easy plant to grow. You can grow them in containers, but really in containers, you got to have a large container. We're talking size of a half of a wine barrel, or I would say a 15 or 20 gallon container would be the minimal size that we will experiment with in our trying to grow them in containers. So we've got 6 here, we've got 7 there. We're going to have a lot of yacons, and we're very excited because now that we've saved the rhizomes, we are able to carry on the generations and save a lot of money and get a lot of unique crops that many people around southeast Wisconsin are not growing. Thanks for watching. Join us again next time for more organic gardening and food production. I'm Joy Barrett, and this has been the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.